welcome everybody so much to the Parenting Beyond Punishment webinar, How to Unload Guilt, Anger, Overwhelm, and all those feelings that come up when we're parenting, and how to unload them without dumping them on our kids. My name is Amy Bryant of Parenting Beyond Punishment and Wild Child Counseling, and I have a case of the giggles, I'm sorry. And I'm a licensed and board certified counselor. I'm an educator and a child advocate, and I specialize here in Atlanta in working with children, adolescents, families, and educators. And then I started Parenting Beyond Punishment as an online venue for parents and other people who work with children who just really are looking to increase their skills in working with children without punishing and shaming and hitting and yelling. And it's really become a lovely community of support and encouragement too. So I hope that you'll join us over on Parenting Beyond Punishment. And I'm really looking forward to having Kathy on today. Kathy, I see you're muted, so I'm going to try to fix it myself. Whoops. There, okay. So this is Kathy. Kathy is a single adoptive mother to a 10-year-old boy, and more than anything, she wanted her son to experience the unconditional love she felt was missing from her childhood. But parenting a child whose first life experiences were traumatic proved to be more challenging than she had envisioned. She found herself struggling with her son's fear-driven aggression as it was triggering her own childhood trauma. Then, as Kathy began to practice the hand-in-hand parenting tools, she saw and felt the potential for real healing for herself and her son. Kathy is particularly interested in working with foster and adoptive parents and parents of children with any type of special need, learning, or behavior challenge. She offers the Parenting by Connection starter class, works with parents individually, provides trainings for educators and professionals, and is a gifted speaker. Her passion is practicing and teaching conscious child raising by connection in order that we may foster cooperation and peace in our families and the world. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I realized that I wrote that intro a couple of years ago, or, you got it off the website a couple of years ago. Yeah. My son's actually 11 and a half now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's 11 and a half. He's about 3 inches taller than I.
Oh my gosh. That's a game changer too, right?
Yeah. And he is he's actually homesick today, so he may wander into the kitchen so everyone may get a chance to get a glimpse of him. But so just know that if he comes in, I'm a parent too. I'm right there in the trenches with
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. So I also wanted to extend an invitation to all of you here. You can join our discussion. There's a chat room to my right. I don't know if that's where it is for you, but it's right here for me. You can chat with us there. We'll get to you when we can. There's also a question box, and if you click that question box, you can ask a question and we'll see that it's a question. Like we have one right now, wondering if we were having technical difficulties. Yes, we were. Sorry. And then there is about a 10 to 15 second delay. So just kind of hang in there with us, knowing that there is a delay. You can refresh your browser if you're having technical difficulties, or you can also sign out and sign back in. Oftentimes that will fix the problem. So welcome, Kathy. I'm so excited for you to be telling everybody about how we can really unload these feelings that sort of overwhelm us without dumping them on our kids and our spouses and any other unsuspecting victim that may be around.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I mean, because and emotions in our society get kind of a bad rap. When you think about like anger, like everyone says, oh, well, they have anger issues, or they, they're out of control, or, what I love about what I've learned through Parenting by Connection and the listening tools is that we really see the emotions as this bubbling up of some old hurt. And if allowed to release those emotions, then we're actually healing the old hurt. And So for those of your, everybody who's listening and who don't know, that Parenting by Connection offers 4 adult to child listening tools: special time, setting limits, stay listening, and play listening. And then we have a parent to parent or adult to adult listening tool. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, because that's the tool that we can use to support each other, and so that there's this safe space for us to offload those feelings that are, again, just like, like we don't get upset when well, sometimes we do, when the oil light goes on in our car, because it just means like, oh, the car needs more oil. Or sometimes I like to use this analogy of, like the, excuse me, when the transmission goes out in a car and it's just sort of stuck. Like, so, like we might think of it as like that revving of the engine. That tells us that the transmission's stuck. So we just call AAA and we just get some help. So this tool is kind of like the AAA of parenting that we can provide for each other.
Yes.
More? Should I just keep?
Well, tell us about it. Do you want me to put up the slide about listening partnerships?
Actually, let me do this first. So,
okay.
So the first question is like, why do I get so upset? Why do I get so triggered? Why do I get so frustrated? Why is it that my son's leaving his clothes all over the floor? It just sends me through the roof. I I lose this capacity for patience, for maybe looking at it from his perspective, for finding a playful, creative way that's not threatening, not punishing, not shaming, that I can work with this fact that he comes in, takes off his clothes, and there's sort of this trail from the door to his room, and so what is it that's so what it is about our kids' behavior that makes us crazy? Well, one school of thought is that children need to behave in a certain way, and so there are strategies, some of which are threatening and punishing and withdrawing affection and taking away, that would seek to control the child's behavior so that I don't get upset. Well, the parenting by connection approach, and it's the other paradigm when you think about kids' behavior. and Amy, all the work you do is just so in alignment with parenting by connection, and it's just so extraordinary because we recognize that behavior as a cry for help, as communication, and so we want to find non-threatening, connected, playful, creative ways to work with our kids, to help our kids. Like, we see that if a child's off track, that they're really disconnected. So how can we reconnect with them? Well, in that moment when I'm, feeling about my son's behavior, there's just, I don't have the capacity for connecting with him. So, and let me talk for a second about why that is neurologically. So for anyone out there who's like a neuroscientist or, brain surgeon or something, this is going to be a gross oversimplification of the brain. And I'm just, because the brain has, 2 hemispheres and all different quadrants. And so I'm just going to talk about the brain from bottom to top, right? Just the sort of vertical brain. And Dan Siegel, in his book, Parenting from the Inside Out, and really all of his work, he gives us this great hand model where he says, our brain is anatomically, fits in our skull, just like our fist, like this. So he describes it as like this part here, this is our brain stem, this is our alarm center. That's the part that keeps us alive. Our fight-flight response comes from this part of the brain. And when we're born, this is the part that's most fully developed. and that's why babies are in this state of like either, you know, happy or they're screaming like they're going to die. It's because this alarm center is what's really running their whole system, right? So, and you know, this is the part that, like, you know, needed to save us from lions and tigers and bears. So it's very important to our survival. Then the next part of the brain that develops is this middle section. And this is our emotional processing center and our memory. This is called this middle section here is called the limbic system. This is where one of the big emotions that we process is fear. The amygdala is our fear processing center. And it's also where this part doesn't develop until we're about 2.5 to 3, but the hippocampus is the part of the brain where we put a time date stamp on things. So, for example, if you were to play a song right now that was popular in the, you know, early 90s, like most people, that song would trigger something in them where they could remember, like, oh yeah, I remember that song was playing on the beach, or that's the song that played when I first met my husband, or that's the song from my high school prom. You know, like that's the hippocampus. That puts the time date stamp on memories, right? So, but because that part of the brain doesn't fully develop until about the age of 3, all those experiences that we have as little ones, they go into our brain unfiltered. And meaning that they don't have a time date stamp on them. We can't recall them like that memory I just, you know, gave the example of the music playing. We know exactly where we were when we first heard it. That early experience goes into our kids, went into our brains without a time date stamp, and usually with strong physical sensation and strong emotional sensation. So like here's the memory and here's the emotion and physical sensation, like stuck together like this, right? So what happens is that when something, so there was some little hurt, some little disappointment, or maybe even some early medical trauma, or maybe there was a divorce in our family or a death in our family at a very early age, that experience went into this middle part of our brain with all that physical sensation and emotion glommed onto it, right? So when something happens today that we call it like re-stimulates that old memory, we don't remember it like a memory, but we do re-experience the physical. Like we re-experience the emotion. Like the way Dan Siegel describes it in Parenting from the Inside Out is that our body responds neurologically as if we were back in that moment when we were 2 and we got bit by the dog, or, you know, or our parents really yelled at us, or we were experiencing our parents fighting, or, you know, we were left too long to cry in the crib. You know, we re-experience that, all of the feelings come back, that sense of fear, powerlessness, all of that just kind of, it like really resonates and like takes over, like sort of hijacks the brain. Again, that's how Dan Siegel talks about it. It's like it hijacks our brain. So just for a second, let me finish this. So here, like really right on top of the limbic system is our prefrontal cortex, the thinking, reasoning part of our brain. And what happens when this limbic system gets re-stimulated, it sends this message to the alarm center of danger, danger, danger. You know, and again, you know, that alarm center kind of hijacks our brain, and this happens. We have no connection to the prefrontal cortex. We have little to no connection to that thinking, reasoning part of our brain that's like, okay, Kathy, take a breath. It's just clothes. They're just clothes. Like really, my relationship with my son and how he feels is much more important than just these clothes that are on the floor. But no, I become kind of enraged. And so then, you know, so then I'm yelling at him about, or I feel this sense of being taken for granted, or not being respected, or, you know, feeling powerlessness in the face of these clothes all over the floor, because how many times have I told him? How many times have I asked him to please, you know? So, but that's because there's no connection to this thinking part of my brain that would go like, oh, let's see, how can I be playful about this? Or maybe if I went in and gave him a snuggle and did a few minutes of special time, then like he would, when I said, would you please pick up your clothes, he would pick them up. Or like I did one time when I was able to think well, and this was all connected. I challenged him to see if he could get the clothes in the hamper while I was blocking him. So it was like this basketball game, right? So I'm trying to block him, and he's, you know, so it was laughter, and all the clothes got picked up, and our relationship stayed, you know, deepened, and we stayed connected, and, you know, there was no shame or no blame. And, you know, I got a clean house. He put the clothes away, and we had fun doing it. That only happens when you've got an integrated brain that's not being triggered and hijacked, right? So, so what do you do? So how do I even figure out, like, you know, why I'm so crazy about this, the clothes being left on the floor, or, you know, or it could be any number of things, right? Or how much time he spends on his iPod. You know, I've got 11-and-a-half-year-old examples, Amy, but I'm sure you have more, you know, younger kid examples on the tip of your tongue. Things that make you crazy. Or maybe our listeners have some good examples we can talk about.
If you guys want to put some examples, please do. We would love to hear them.
Yeah. So like, what is it that's making me crazy? So, Parenting by Connection, we have this wonderful tool called listening partnerships. The way a listening partnership works is that I have a partner, usually another parent. At least for me, all of my partners are other parents, and we set up a time where we're going to, one person's going to listen and the other person's going to share. We set a timer so that we make sure that we divide the time equally. And the most important thing about this is that my partner, when they listen to me, they're going to give me their undivided, warm attention. So we set a timer so they don't have to, you know, keep looking at their watch, right? So they're going to listen, and they're going to give you their warmth and attention. They're not going to interrupt. They're not going to try to give me advice or fix me. You know, normally when we're upset about something, we call a friend, and we get about 3 or 4 sentences into it, and our friend says, "Oh, you know what you should do?" Or like, "Oh, yes, you know, my sister had that very same problem, and she has got a great plumber." Or you know what I mean? Like with the best of intentions, we want so much to help each other, to solve problems, you know, to be a good friend. So, but this listening is very different, because what my partner is going to do is they're just going to hold the thought that I'm good, that anybody I'm talking about is good, and that I'm going to figure it out. That if I get the opportunity to rant and rave about the clothes on the floor, and to, you know, and to maybe have a good cry, have a good laugh, it might, you know, there might be some fear that comes up, so I might shake a little bit. I might move my body to let that fear out. You know, I might start to yawn. I might even start to sweat if it's like a really old hurt and there's a lot of fear around it. So those are all signs. Remember, I talked about, like, here's the early experience, the early hurt. There's the physical sensations and the emotions that are glommed onto it. So even if I never remember what the early hurt is, when my partner's listening to me and I'm, you know, maybe I start out, so here's a good example. So my son, when my son was 6, he was having a lot of trouble at the school where we were going. It's a free alternative school. Children were allowed exclusionary play. And my son was rejected and ganged up on and ostracized on a daily basis. This was really, really hard for me. And I was furious, and and I knew that if I had a conversation with the teacher about it when I was that angry, that I wouldn't get anywhere. So I took it to my listening partner, and first I was just ranting and raving and crying about how unfair this is, and they should do something about it, and and then I tend to think in pictures. So the picture of we lived in an apartment when my son was first born. We lived in an apartment in Santa Monica. And when my son was about 2 months old, the neighbor started harassing us. And I won't go into the details. That's not really important. It wasn't, it was just her stuff. But the thing about it was I felt really powerless because nobody seemed to be able to do anything about it. Not the landlord. So now I thought, oh gosh, I've never cried about this. So I was crying about that. And then I had this picture of my dad yelling at my mom. And I was in her arms. So let's say I was, a year or so. This is definitely like an implicit memory that went into my brain before. Like there's no time date stamp on this, so we don't always get to these memories, but sometimes they come up. But there's just a sense that my dad was yelling at my mom, and my mom was crying, and I was crying. And so I started talking about that and like had a really good hard cry about it. And then the timer went off. My partner asked me like this silly little detailed question. I don't know, something like name 3 cities that start with B, or maybe she said, look around, we were in a park, look around and tell me 3 things that you see that are the color red. Some little detailed question, because when I was crying and, talking about those old hurts, I was really in this part of my brain. And then, so she asks me that silly little question so I can reconnect to my cortex. And so my attention's back up and out so that then I could listen to her. And the really great thing about that is that then I got to it wasn't, yes, it was upsetting what was happening with my son, but it was triggering old childhood hurts of mine and unfairness that I had felt as a child. And so once I had a good cry about that, what happens is that even if you don't ever remember, like you release through that laughter and tears and shaking and yawning and sweating, you release the emotion. So the memory's still there, but it's not running you. You don't get re-stimulated by it. You don't get thrown so much back into that place of feeling powerless, which we feel so often in parenting. It's kind of like parenting is designed to make us feel powerless, yeah?
To show us maybe that we're powerless all along.
Yeah, yes. And oftentimes that feeling of powerlessness really is coming from those old hurts.
Yeah.
Because what's really great about the Parenting by Connection tools is that if I'm thinking well and not being run by old hurts, my own old hurts, and if I'm not taking my son's behavior personally, there's almost always something I can do. I can be playful about it. I can set a limit and listen to his feelings about it. I can even decide that in this moment, I'm going to do a workaround. I'm just going to try to meet his need, and we'll deal with but I can think well.
Yeah.
So there's almost always something I can just lay down on the ground if it's feeling like a power struggle. If I have, if I'm connected enough to the thinking part of my brain, I can go, okay, I'm just going to lay down here on the ground for a second. Yeah. And let that shift the power struggle. So there's always something I can do, but I need to be thinking well and not taking my son's behavior personally. And so I have access to that creative, problem-solving, reasoning part of my brain, which I think I didn't say that here's the emotional, processing center, the memory center. Here's the prefrontal cortex. This is the creative, problem solving, empathy. People think that empathy is in your emotional part of your brain. It's actually an executive function. The ability to be empathetic really comes from the thinking part of your brain. So, when I have access to this, then I can be empathetic. I can be playful. I can be creative. I can, so yeah. So that's listening partnerships.
I love it. For me, I think it's so easy, like you said, to feel powerlessness, but in some ways I feel like it's almost redefining what power means. So instead of powering over our children and controlling them, it's finding power to work with them, right? That power of, from me, sole responsibility, to the power of me and her, and that cooperating together, and how much easier it is when you're no longer like, I'm going to make you go my way. Instead, it's, okay, here we are together in the same boat. Here's our space together. What can we do to solve this? It's such a shift in power.
Yes.
And less exhausting.
Yes. And it's very difficult when our old hurts and disappointments are being re-stimulated. Mm-hmm. We're just becomes like, the only way I can feel, well, it's human nature. We see it all the time. When somebody is hurt, then they, the bucket book about, if your bucket is full, then you can fill up your bucket by filling up other people's buckets. And then it has there's a picture of the kid whose bucket is empty, and so he's like taking from other people's buckets. Well, when our bucket is empty, and there's we think the way to get power is by controlling other people, and particularly controlling these little ones. We think that's going to make us feel more powerful, and in the end, it just erodes the safety of the relationship, and it just erodes the relationship. But what I love about this is a couple things. One is that it really, like, I love the hand-in-hand parenting by connection approach that really sees parents as good. Like, all of you parents out there who have taken the time to come in live today, or going to listen to the playback, like, just know that you are good. And so when you have those thoughts and feelings about, you just like to, leave your kid on some corner in some shopping center and just walk away, or like, just, please, somebody come take them, when we have those thoughts, it's not because we're bad mothers or bad parents or bad people. It's because we got hurt as little ones. The little dings and disappointments, and that's what's being re-stimulated. So that's the one thing, one of the many things I love about listening partnerships. And the other thing I love is that it provides me with a tool for taking the responsibility for my stuff. Yeah. As opposed to, like, if my son would only do this, then I wouldn't get frustrated, or then I could be happy. I'm taking responsibility for my stuff. I'm the adult. When I get re-stimulated, I certainly don't feel like an adult. I'm 2 again. And I'm like, you're going to do this because I said so. Yeah. And I'm, like, right. Just stop it. So, listening partnerships is a way for me to heal my little 2-year-old so that she doesn't pop out so often.
Right.
And then I'll just say one other thing that I love. It's just this is just sort of this you'll know, listening partnerships is one of those things where it sounds weird. It sounds like the weirdest thing we teach. It's one of those things where I have to say, look, just put your toes in the water, just try it. And because one of the magic things about it is that sometimes there'll be something like I was, again, my son's 11 and a half, right? He's a boy. So the things that we're struggling, some of the big things that we're struggling with is like cleaning up after yourself. So I took him not cleaning up his room to my listening partner and ranted and raved about it and had a good cry about it. And mostly what I got to was like the fears that I have, like the fear, like we all have these fears of like, oh my gosh, if my son or my child is doing this at 5, like what are they going to be like at 12 and 15 and 18? Like how are they ever going to survive in the world? Like, if they're hitting kids now at 3 or 4 or 5, like, oh, so mostly I got to that fear of like, I just don't want him to be that kind of adult who is a slob, well, but, and so I had a good cry about it and a good laugh about it. And then later that day, spontaneously, he said, Mom, I think I'm going to clean my room. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes, like the very thing that it feels like we're going like this, I get some listening time around it, then I don't know, it's like, for people who are like into that whole idea of like relationships or energy, like because my energy shifts and I'm not like so tight, then he shifts. Like, suddenly it changes. So, for that parenting perspective of like, oh, kids, they really know how to push your buttons. Well, this is a way to heal your buttons. So there aren't so many buttons to push.
Right. Yeah. It's true. Because when we are wearing less buttons, we're not triggered.
Right.
I took the professional intensives with Hand in Hand last year, and a lot of the class was having listening time. And I just remember thinking at first, like, oh, this is kind of awkward, but also finding myself being in a place where I could problem solve with much greater ease. And having fewer buttons. I mean, it was like things that used to irritate me. I was kind of like, oh, oh, sure, we can play basketball and with our clothes to put them away. I mean, it's really about, like you said, Kathy, processing that stuff that's stuck in us that we're not even aware of and letting it go so that we're free from that and we can problem solve. It's a great thing. And I just remember doing that and going, this is so weird. I can't believe how much this is helpful. And I just loved that part of it. I mean, I loved the entire intensive. All of those tools are amazing. So I'm wondering, what would you like to do? Do you want to, I mean, you pretty much went through the slides. We could throw them up there if you want to look over them real quick, or I could just send them to everybody later.
Can people see them now?
Yeah. Do you want me to pull them up?
Yeah, I just wonder if people have any questions. And then the other thought I had, Amy, is that do you want to give it a whirl and we'll
sure,
do a little listening partnership? Maybe just
sure, we'll try it here. So let me show y'all the slides so y'all can see it. This is just about listening partnership. This is the whole process that she talked about. Do you want to say anything about them? Anything more about them, Kathy?
I think I'll just mention one thing about number 4, why I say that, when your mind wanders, just think this thought that they're good and everyone they're talking about is good and they'll figure it out, is because we just really are, we've trained ourselves in a beautiful way to be problem solvers. And so that's why I like to give people this little mantra that while the other person is talking, just to hold that thought. If you feel your brain kind of go down the train of either wandering about what would be helpful to them or wandering towards your to-do list, you know, you can just come back to this place of holding this thought. So, and just, you know, giving them your warm attention, because your warm attention is what it anchors them in the, like we can really dig deep, and we can, you know, in the safety of this partnership, we can really like say all the things to our kids, that all the horrible things that we never want to say. We can say to our parents what we would have liked to have said to them. You know, like this is a really safe space where we get to act out as much as we want. And it's your partner's warm attention that is just anchoring you in the reality that you're not those things that you're saying or thinking. You're not those old hurts. You're not those messages that you got when you were a child. And just kind of getting them up and out is just that. It's getting them up and out. So I just wanted to emphasize number 4. And then I wanted to say about number 10, what keeps the initial reaction people often have when we talk about listening partnerships is like, oh, well, I could never reveal some of the things that, you know. Well, so a listening partnership is really sacred. You make a couple of agreements, one of which is that you will never refer to anything that the other person said. You know, it's like, you jokingly say, like, you know, it's like Las Vegas, like what happens in Las Vegas, right? So anything that's said in listening partnership, it will never be referred to again. And this is particularly important if, let's say your partner is you know, you've made a partnership with a mom from your preschool. So you're gonna see each other the very next day in, you know, in pickup line or in drop off. So in order for this to be a safe space, you really have to make that agreement that not only would you not ever say anything, share anything they said to anyone else, like gossiping, but you won't even say it to them. Like, so you won't say like, oh, hey, how's that bedtime thing that you were having trouble with? You know, it's sacred. And we slip all the time. And, you know, I actually had a leader of a listening group that I was in. I can share this because this is my stuff, but I was talking about how my mom never went to bed at night. I mean, she had 7 kids, but she never slept, or she'd like sleep at odd times during the night, during the day. And so I never sort of had a role model or this for like, just, you know, turn off the light, go to bed. So I was talking about that, and then we finished, and we were kind of cleaning up the room, I mean, you know, everybody had their turn. It was a group of us, and we were putting everything back in, and I said to the leader, I said, well, you know, does this garbage go out? And she said, with the best of intentions, she said, oh no, I'm not going to let you do that. Oh no, you do enough. And it was a direct referral to what I had just said, and I felt sucker punched. So, you know, so the point is that we slip all the time, but that we just want to be careful. And if somebody slips, you just say, oh, hey, you know, I told you that in listening time. And then the other thing I would say about 10 is, in terms of keeping your listening time sacred, like it's a really good idea not to socialize before or after listening time. So somebody was teaching about listening partners to somebody, and 2 people stood partner up, and the one said, oh yeah, well, you know, let's get together for a glass of wine and we'll do listening partnerships. And I said, well, no, that's not exactly, you know, you really want to keep the time sacred. There may be other times that you socialize, but if you're getting together for listening partnerships, try to have it be just about listening partnerships, because if you're going to socialize before or after, there's more possibility that it, you know, inadvertently you could start talking about something that somebody shared in listening time. So in order for it to be a safe space, um, those, you have to really make those agreements. And yeah, so that was, I think that was the only thing that I wanted to say. What we maybe at, well, either now or after you and I do a little demo, we could, and then there was, oh yeah, and then these other suggestions. Yeah, just so that you know, what's great. Sometimes people ask, well, like if I cry really hard, like then won't I be depressed all day long? It's been my experience, and I've been doing it for, oh, well, I was actually introduced to it even before I was a parent, but I've been probably doing it as a parent for about 6 years. It's my experience that because I get a chance to get my feelings up and out, I generally feel lighter. I may feel like, oh, this is something I want to revisit, or this is something I want to work on more. My stuff with my dad or whatever, or my money stuff. But in general, I almost always feel lighter because I've had the warm attention. I've had this person who's anchoring me in the truth that I'm going to figure it out and that I'm good, and they believe in me. Just as a side note, the interesting thing about giving people advice, as well-intentioned as it is it actually does, it can undermine the person's confidence in in their own ability, particularly unsolicited advice. Oftentimes we, because of a desire to help, will give unsolicited advice. So it's great that when you get together, maybe you each start with something that's going well or some bright spot, and then you might end with something you're looking forward to or something that you appreciate about each other. And that just, again, that emphasizes that even though I have these hurt feelings, sad feelings, scared feelings, that if I look out, like there's really so much in my life that's good. People will say too, ask too about, like, well, doesn't this fly in the face, or isn't this opposed to like positive thinking? And I actually had that consideration because I had kind of disciplined myself from be like more of a metaphysical thinker, like whatever you think about and talk about, like that's what you're creating in your reality. But what I have found is that these old feelings and hurts are there anyway. And so when I get a chance to get them up and out, and again, like release that, have that emotional release where the emotion is I'm letting go of the emotion, then there's all this space for having positive thoughts. It's like the cup that's full. If you keep trying to pour in positivity and the cup is full, well, the cup is just overflowing, right? You've still got all this gunk in the cup. Well, if you empty the cup, then there's all this space for positive thoughts and feeling good and choosing a thought that feels good. So I actually find that this tool is in alignment with that, that discipline or that practice of choosing a thought that feels good, or thinking good thoughts, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So I was thinking, Kathy, what do you think of this? What if we invite someone to come online, and they can either be on camera or off camera? We can turn off the camera if they just want to be a voice. If someone wants to do that, put in the margin that you want to do it, and Kathy will listen. If no one wants to do it, I'll do it. But if you want to do it, let us know in the chat room. And let's give them a minute, and there's a couple of questions on here. Candace says, I also am an only parent. I find it hard to find a listening partner. It seems like a lot of people don't want to share this kind of stuff. And then Olivia also says that she's looking for a listening partner. Any recommendations on how to find one?
Yes. Yes. So great, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't end today without talking about that. So the big answer is that you can train anybody to be a listening partner. And as long as they're willing to follow the guidelines, right? Specifically, how you can find a listening partner that is, let's say, also practicing a connected, parenting beyond punishment, a non-threatening way of parenting, and so you feel like you're already simpatico, is that the Hand in Hand has a Yahoo discussion group, and I think, Amy, you're going to put the link. I don't know if I sent you that, but we'll make sure you get the link to that discussion group. Mm-hmm. That's a place that you can post. I'm looking for a listening partner. There's also, and Amy, I know I didn't send you the link to that. If you go to the Hand in Hand website, handinhandparenting.org, and you look under community, there is a link that says, let me just make sure, that says, actually it's under support forum. At the top of the website, handinhandparenting.org, there's some icons, and one says support forum, and all the way over on the left, it says find a listening partner. It says email discussion group, so there's a link to the Yahoo group, and then it says find a listening partner, and that will take you to a specific group on the website where you can post again that you're looking for a listening partner. And here's what I'd recommend. So sometimes people think that, I need to find somebody who has like the same, demographics that I have. The most important thing about a listening partner, two things. One is that they'll follow the guidelines. And the second is that your schedules mesh. Yeah, so my first listening partner, so I'm a single parent of a boy who, when we became partners, he was about 5 or 6, and she is married, and she has a daughter who's about 4 years younger than my son. But we were both practicing the Parenting by Connection tools, and our schedules worked out. Now we're still partners. Sometimes our schedules have changed, but we still try to catch each other every once in a while. In the meantime, what I did was I took a Parenting by Connection starter class, which the great thing, it's a 6-week class where you take one tool each week and you practice one tool each week, but you are doing listening partnerships all throughout the 6 weeks. So you have a built-in community right there, and you have an instructor who is listening to you and helping each of you listen to each other. So that's a way to really learn how to do a listening partnership and have a built-in community right away. So the Yahoo discussion group, the group on the I can't remember what the platform is, Zing or Ling or something like that platform on the website, but it'll take you to a group on the website. Joining a starter class where you have a built-in community. Those are all ways to get a listening partner. And then the most important thing, as I say, is that your schedules mesh, that you have approximately the same time when you can get together, and that you'll follow the guidelines.
And Kathy, let me just interrupt real quick. So it doesn't have to happen in person, right? It can happen via Skype or phone or in a Google Hangout or wherever you want it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, in person is great because then you have that person's warm attention, you have physical contact. Let's say you're trying to fight against something, you can push against them. I mean, when my son was doing a lot of throwing, and it was really triggering for me. Like I had an in-person listening partnership where I asked him to throw pillows at me so that I could, like get pummeled by pillows and throw them back, and I could like not be so re-stimulated by it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power and value in an in-person listening partnership, and you do not have to do them in person. I have listening partners in almost every time zone. So if I'm up late, I've got somebody who's in Portugal at the moment. You know, like midnight my time is like 9 o'clock in the morning her time. You know, I got somebody on the East Coast. You know, so and then people here in California. So you know, so it's great to have more than one listening partner. I have I called one listening partner the other day, and I said, do you have, so another thing you can do is you can do one-way listening time. You don't want to do it always, but I often will do what I call emergency listening time, which Amy, the article of mine that you posted on the website that's called Quit Being So Mad, where we had a little tussle in the car, and I stepped out of the car, and my son, right at the moment that my son was shoving the laptop towards me and the laptop went flying out of the car.
Oh, gosh.
At that moment, I grabbed my cell phone and I said, well, I picked up the laptop first, but I grabbed my cell phone and I said to him, I'll be back. I have to go get some listening time. Mm-hmm. And I walked around the corner, and I don't think I got anybody, but I just left a voicemail, you know. So I have listening partners that are perfectly fine with me, like leaving, you know, like using the warm attention of their voicemail, or, you know, so that I could offload enough so that I could go back and be calm, because it was an accident.
Right.
But, you know, it was a, you know, potentially a $1,500 accident.
Right.
You know?
Let me ask you another question. Is it okay to have a listening partnership with someone you don't know, and can it be a friend you already have?
So the answer is yes to both. And so the great thing about somebody you don't know is that they have no preconceived ideas about you. So it's almost sometimes even easier to trust that they're just going to think you're good. Okay. So the thing about a friendship is that, yes, you absolutely can do a listening partnership with a friendship. It can require, I think, a little bit more courage, because there's already water under the bridge, right? And this is somebody that you socialize with. So there's that thought of like, I don't want them to think badly of me. And like, if I tell them like how angry I really get with my kids, or if I tell them how much I really hate my husband, like, are they going to look at me straight? You know, like, so that can be the challenge of a friendship. However, if you go into it and you just commit that this is a safe space, and you know, and you keep it separate from any time that you socialize, then it can work. And there's a great article on our website called "The Value of a Good Tantrum," written by Julie Eidelman, who's our communications director, and before that she was an instructor, and her husband Tom has been an instructor. And it's a really beautiful article about how they were gardening, she was cranky, she kept sniping at her husband, and then she says, brilliant man that he is, he said, okay, tell me all of it. And because they have done listening partnerships with each other, and they've created the safety, she could start out ranting and raving about all the things that she felt he was doing wrong and all the injustices. But as she talked, she said, I then got the picture of the hard look in my mother's eye, and how judged she felt by her mother, and she had a good cry about that. And so, because her husband stopped and said, tell me all of it, she was able to offload the hurt that was being triggered. Who knows how it got triggered? It's not really important, but the hurt that was driving her snarky off-track behavior, right? Just like we say that it's oftentimes hurt and disconnection that drives our kids off-track, snarky off-track behavior. Same thing happens with us.
Right.
And so, and so it's a really beautiful article, like a little essay, and it's a great example of an adult using a listening partnership, and then it's called The Value of a Good Tantrum, because she goes on to say how, like, that's what we can do for our kids. We can, when they're upset, we can lean down and say, tell me all of it. So it's just beautiful. It's an article. When I read it, I get a little conflumped every time I read it.
I'm going to link to a lot of these things in our No Spank Challenge group. So if y'all are missing them or you don't have a pencil or paper, I'm going to link to them in the group. Be sure you go there. It's the Facebook private group. If you're not a part of it, just ask to join and we'll get you in there. So yeah, I would love to link to that article. It sounds awesome. I may have read it. I just can't remember right now. We have, so someone said that they would be happy to be listened to. Natasha says she would like to be listened to. So let me invite her. And Natasha, if you want, okay, so here she comes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's see if she can come up fairly easy. She'll have to accept the invitation.
Bryant, you're a technological whiz here, being able to run all these bells and whistles.
This is a first for me. We'll see how it works. They changed the platform a little bit, so it's taken some time to get used to. So Natasha, if you're still online and you would like to come, I believe you'll have to click yes on it. Let me try it one more time just to see. I did work with a friend on this before, and they said it kind of happens abruptly. Let's see. So she might still be trying to get on. So while we wait for her to come on, I thought you might want to speak to this because I know you have some really lovely parenting by connection tools. Paige says that her 2-year-old throws a tantrum and she's pregnant and she can't physically get him downstairs or get him into the high chair. So how do I keep from yelling and how do I keep from forcing him?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's Paige.
Paige.
Paige. So, so Paige, what I would recommend is that we just did a free teleseminar on persistent difficult behavior, which we call emotional projects, and I'll make sure Amy gets the link and that she sends the link to you. So I'd highly recommend listening to that because I think it'll help a lot because it's a combination of things. I don't have a sort of simple, like if you do, if you, if you whistle this certain song, it'll happen. But from her perspective, what's happening is that she's about to be replaced and all of your attention is going towards this big lump in your stomach. And at 2, all she's feeling is like that suddenly the light's gone out in the room. Like your warmth and attention is her light. And so she's feeling like suddenly her light has, gone out, like she's in the darkness. So what you'll learn on the teleseminar is that doing more regular special time with her so that she feels your attention and your connection more often is really, really good for her right now, particularly in preparation for being replaced. She's about to be replaced. So setting limits around things that, where she just refuses are really hard, but there's other ways to help her offload these feelings of being replaced, which is to set little limits. Like, let's say one day she asks for you give her the red cup with juice and she wants the blue cup. Now, normally it's like no big deal. Oh, okay, I'll just give you the blue cup, But because you're feeling patient and calm, you decide you're going to set this little limit, and without any explanation, you go, "Oh, sweetie, we're gonna use the red cup today." And so she has a tantrum about the red cup. Now, you don't have to go anywhere. You're not trying to get her in a car seat, but she gets to offload all of that tension that's driving the other off-track behavior around this red cup, blue cup thing. And if you're doing more regular special time and setting little limits that it doesn't really matter, but that you have the capacity, I think you'll find that she's going to be more cooperative around. You'll just start. She'll just in general start to be a little lighter and a little bit more cooperative, because one, you're upping the connection, and two, you're giving her opportunities when it's convenient for you to offload the feelings of disconnection and fear that are driving that nutty off-track behavior. So that's the kind of the short answer. And if you listen to the teleseminar, it'll explain it in a much more detail.
Mm-hmm. I love your work on emotional projects. I think it's like you said, sometimes we can't do anything right. The red cup's not right, and then the blue cup's not right, and then the purple cup's not right, and then you go, oh, okay, this is an emotional project. Like, she needs me to set a limit.
Yeah.
And the other tool that I like that is almost always a go-to when it's not an emotional project is that playing, like before you try to get your daughter downstairs, or son, I'm not sure if it's a son or a daughter, it's a son. You play, you get down, and you're pregnant, so you might not want to get down and wrestle, but you find something that makes them. You could have a sock fight. And you find something to make them giggle and laugh and feel connected, and then a lot of times they'll become a lot more wanting to be with you and to connect with you and work with you and cooperate with you, and that can really help. It's hard to be stuck in that place with them where they don't want to go downstairs, they don't want to get in their high chair, and they don't want to eat that breakfast. It's just a tough place.
Yeah.
So I was not able to get her on. And one of the things that I was remembering while you two were talking was the power of helping bring your partner back up. Find 3 yellow things, and then again, one more round. Let's, what is one thing you're looking forward to? Those are really powerful, and that's what helps us go, okay, and then be back. Be back present.
Yeah. And I don't know if Natasha is still with us, but it's really courageous that she was able to dive in and access some feelings in just 4 minutes, just a short amount of time. The longer we can do with our partners, like 30 minutes each way, 15 minutes each way, is it's great, because then you can really get to like the old hurts that are like, what in my current situation, or let me put the other way around, like what is the current situation, like what is it re-stimulating? Mm-hmm. Because this is not, when we get hurt, it's not the first time we've been hurt, and sometimes there's a hurt that just knocks us back, but so it's really powerful, like it's to go back and heal the original hurt, the hurts when we were small, and then we're able to weather the challenges of the current day much more easily, with much more grace and much more, sometimes when we're going through a hard time, people want to get us right away to that place of like, oh, well, this is a blessing, or you'll look back on this and you'll see, like, why it was so hard, and I'm sure there's some meaning in this. And when we're in the midst of it, we're like, no, this just sucks, But in listening partnerships, when we go back and we heal the times when we were very small and we felt hurt or powerless or disappointed, scared, then we can sometimes have a little bit more grace, or move through easily, or at least know what to do about current challenges. And I just wanted to say, this is a little bit like, so like what makes a listening partnership, or how can I make the most of my listening time? And what I like to tell when I'm teaching listening partnerships is um, as I get to know my partner, and even sometimes when we first start out, I really try to get right to the heart of the matter. So in normal conversation, if you and I were talking, or even if you were going to do a consultation with me, you might want to tell me a lot of the circumstances, right? And a lot of like what, exactly what happened. And in listening partnership, my partner doesn't need to know anything about anything. They don't need to know how something happened, why something happened, when it happened. They don't need to know any of that. I can just use their attention to just get to the feelings. And so I say skip the details. That's my, for like using listening time well, like skip the details. And sometimes when I find myself like trying to explain the situation, I think to myself, okay, you're tap dancing around this, you're avoiding the feelings, like just get to the feelings, And sometimes when I get stuck and I can't get to the feelings, I move my body, like you saw me, like I shake a little bit, or I might even, I don't know if you can. I'll try to bring the camera with me, but I bend over, and there's something, I bend over and I move my body. I just kind of, and there's something for me, and for everybody it's different, and everybody will find their way. But there's something for me that if I release my lower back, like if I bend over and release my lower back, suddenly there's feelings there. I'm no longer like in my cortex, like talking. I've dropped into my limbic system, and there's actually feelings there that I can express. I often do a lot of listening time in my car. So if you walk by my car and you see me up on my hands and knees in my over the stick shift, over the emergency brake, you'll know I'm doing listening time and trying to get to some feelings. So, yeah. So. Uh-oh. Amy, I've lost you. I can't hear you now.
You can hear me now. I keep pushing mute so you don't hear me, my dog. Okay. And thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing this wonderful tool with our listeners. If you want to work with Kathy, you can find her on handinhandparenting.org. She has both a class, which I didn't write down, but she has a class going on that you can sign up for. It's the introduction class, right?
Yeah, the starter class.
The starter class, and you can also work with her on parenting consultations. And she's, I mean, you saw her. What's not to love about Kathy? She's right there with you. So I can't recommend her enough. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And Kathy, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and your experience and yourself with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I just love working with you. What's not to love about looking at you? So if anybody can get Amy to be their listening partner, looking at her warm face with her beautiful eyes, you definitely feel safe. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you. If you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to let us know in the No Spank Challenge Facebook page, or you can email us and contact us that way too. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
All right, everybody have a great rest of your day.